I don't know if you saw the movie Bucket List.
I have, yes.
You have. Okay, there's a line in there. I think it's Morgan Freeman's, but the Egyptians had a line. When you come to the judgment throne, they do not ask your accomplishments. They said, how much joy did you have in your life and how much joy did you bring to others? And I'm looking at that and going, I'm bringing joy to these people, or I'm helping them find joy.
Let's first talk about the beginnings before the store actually came to be. So let's start like way back. What were you doing before those days of running the business?
In the early days, I started working for a company called Back Up Further. One of my neighbors was Carrie Lloyd, who was the owner of Game Lords, a game manufacturer. He regrettably had a heart attack and died at his computer, leaving his wife with a teenage son, 2 small daughters, and a basement full of games. She wanted me to help get rid of the basement. So I contacted Bill Jaffe Sr., who had a used game business at the time.
Okay.
And he and I started hauling that stuff to the Gen Con auction. This was back in like '89. We continued to do that for like 3 years. And Jaffe, when Magic started, Bill Jaffe started a company called Cards for You to do Magic and Magic singles and all the card game singles. That he discovered that he readily needed help. I was then in need of a job, so he hired me to work for Cards for You, sorting cards, doing weekend shows to sell the cards and the products. And that carried on for about a year and a half. I left Cards for You, and one of the people for whom I was bringing Magic and doing Magic in his store was Walt Mathis. And Walt asked me if I was going to continue. I said, but I've been fired. He goes, I never fired you. And so I started working for Walt and have continued to work for Walt ever on.
And so how can you describe, from what you know from Walt's told you and from your experience over the years, I guess we'll start with how long has the business been around for, and what was the year when you first started?
I started with him in '94. Walt had been doing baseball cards, but when Magic started to hit and got big, you're probably too young, but in the mid-'90s it got big. All the sports card industry people were saying, if you're not doing Magic, you're missing the boat. So Walt wanted to do Magic in his store. And I started to wholesale Magic to him. And part of that was I would run his Wednesday night Magic events. And those would pack his store and then some. And as we continued to do that, he wanted me to sell Magic more. And his baseball card people kept coming around less and less, and the Magic people kept coming around more and more. And so Walt's store rather morphed into a game store rather than a sports card place.
So the mid-'90s, I would be around 8 years old at that time. And, so I didn't get to see, in '93, I was born in '88, I didn't get to see the origin start of Magic when it first took off. Obviously, I know about it. Started playing, I would say, around maybe early 2000s. It was 2001, 2002. And so when you think back to the early days of when Magic first started, was it as big as it is today?
It started slow. At first, Magic was strictly the name escapes me at the moment. It was strictly ante. You would ante a card from your deck, and the winner would keep it.
Oh, wow.
And that started off that way. And as a fun little game among people. Yeah, it was fine. But I resisted because, well, my friend Gary my friend Gary in October of '93 said, there's this game, Magic the Gathering, 3 words. You should try. And he described it, and he described the ante. And I said, Gary, you're crazy. It's bad enough these mothers think I'm teaching their kids to worship Satan with Dungeons and Dragons. Now you want me to teach them to gamble. You know, no. Yeah. And so I held off. But it was big. If anything, it was bigger. Huge does not... I became a believer in Magic in the origins. San Jose in 1994. We'd flown in from the East Coast, but it was like 11 or midnight their time, so 2 or 3 in the morning. Everything was deserted, except they had a line of 12 people waiting to get in to the Magic play area, which was, only, a dozen tables or so. But they weren't expecting it, but there were people waiting at, midnight their time, Pacific. And Wizards was selling Legends packs for the original $2.45. And they had a limit of 2 packs, and the line backed up 60 people long. And I would go and get my 2 packs and cycle back. And my friend John Venor, who owned Spearhead Games, would circle in and get his 2 packs, and I would give him the $5 pack. And so we were accumulating Legends packs at $2.45. The secondary dealers were selling them and moving them, mind you, at $5 per. At that show.
And now when you look at the price of what those are today, it's astronomical.
Oh yeah. I forget what Legends packs are bringing at the moment. But, yeah, it was huge, but, I wanted to pay $2.45 rather than $5.
Right. And did you anticipate at that point in time, did you think, oh, this game is going to be huge?
It was huge. With all those people.
Right from the get-go.
Well, as I say, give it that first 6 months. But after about the 6 months or so, it was hitting large. As I said, the sports card industry, woke up and noticed.
Okay.
Because I remember the headline, if you're not selling Magic, you're missing the bus. And that was one of the sports cards, newspapers.
Right.
And so all the sports card guys got into it. That would have been like the late summer, early fall of 94 and then 95.
Okay.
And that kicks into the disaster of Fallen Empires, which we'll talk about later if you choose. Right now, Magic is not, to my mind, huge. It is, one leg of the table. Role-playing, Dungeons and Dragons as part of it, but role-playing in general has a major following. Yu-Gi-Oh! Has a big following. Pokemon has a big collector base and a smaller play base, at least as far as I can see. But they're still running tournaments, and there are more and other card games out there, including but certainly not limited to One Piece, Dragon Ball Super, Digimon, My Hero Academia, and many more, which I just can't remember off the top of my head. So gaming is big. Magic is a good part of it, but Magic is not all there is out there.
And you think that's been a gradual shift or change, I should say, over time as the role-playing games have become more popular and more card games have jumped out?
Well, there have always been card games out there. When Magic started out, it wasn't just the sports card guys who felt they were missing the bus. Everybody and his brother brought out a card game. Mm-hmm. Some were successful. The Star Trek, the Star Wars from Decipher. What was it? I forget the name of it. Blood something or another. But it was clearly, at least in our mind, a role-playing game that got crammed onto cards. It was based on some Margaret Weiss books. But anyhow, so some came out and were never heard of again. A game called Terror, giant card game of battling giant armored insects. One almost came out, and I considered it to be a joke. Sorry. I got a promo pack at the store. Now, Pokemon had come out, and everybody wanted to bring out the next Pokemon. And I looked at this. It was called Calorie Kids. You had the good calories and the bad calories,
right.
and you'd collect them, and some of them, one of them was Orange Juju. Another one was Purple Whiz. You have Purple Whiz, see your doctor immediately. And I thought it was hilarious because it was just a complete mockery, done so subtly that it was just, to my mind, hilarious. So I called Scry Magazine. Margaret White, who was the mother of Joan White, the editor. Margaret White was the den mother of the card game industry. Wonderful lady. I said, Margaret, I just got this. This is hilarious. She goes, Dan, sit down. What? It's real. What? It's real? Yes. Oh. Needless to say, we never bought any of it. They brought out the starters and never brought out the boosters. Because it was, somebody had what they thought was a great idea. And, as the Monty Python of the card game, it would have worked.
Yeah.
But trying to, So, Calorie Kids, Netrunner, dozens, if not hundreds of games out there. Oh, The Crow. They did a card game on The Crow, the movie. And that flopped. And I remember that only because when I got fired from Cards for You, Bill hired a woman from Wisconsin who thought The Crow was the greatest movie ever. This was the original. She thought it was the greatest movie ever, and she had Bill buy cases of the stuff because it was such a great movie. But if you weren't really into that goth scene, and it never sold, so in 2000 or 2001, when Bill had me buy out Cards for You, there were still literally cases of unopened Crow cards.
So Cards for You lasted how long?
I lasted with them a little over a year, and it lasted about 5 years after that.
Okay. And the origin of Walt's games, that came to be after that, at least with your involvement?
Well, I got fired from Cards for You. Walt said, "Are you still going to do Magic here?" I said, "Okay." And so I started working for Walt and continued working for Walt. And as I said, his sports card people got less and less interested in coming by, surrounded by a bunch of these nerdy gamers. And so eventually, Walt got out of sports cards entirely and is strictly into games.
So it must have been quite the transition, seeing what it was when you were first there to now. And what's your role there now? Like, what would be your official title? Like, if you were going based off like an official title, like, do you run the store for him?
Pretty much, yeah.
Okay.
I don't know that we ever really stuck to titles.
Right.
Walt and Dan worked fine, and that's, and as Walt got older, he's quit coming around.
Sure.
And then because he didn't have a sports card store, he started doing, operating a travel service.
Oh, okay. Oh, wow. That's a complete departure from what he started.
But it wasn't. But so that kept him away from the store, and so. But yeah, so he's happy and we're happy. So
That's good.
Yeah.
Do you guys interact often talking about the business at all?
No.
He just lets you do your thing.
Yeah.
And what's a day-to-day like for you these days?
At the store?
Yeah.
Well, I get in early. The store hours are 11:30 to 7:30.
Okay.
I get in a little early because I beat the traffic. The store is in Baltimore. You may have heard we lost the bridge.
Yes.
And so traffic is FUBAR. The 4 routes through the city are suddenly 3. The 2 hazmat routes around the city are suddenly 1. They have increased the amount of propane allowed through the tunnels, but traffic in Baltimore is not fun. So I get in a little early, eat breakfast at the store, vacuum, clean up a little bit. It's not busy 24/7, particularly during the week, particularly during the school year. But clean, look to see if stuff we can order, sort magic cards that we bought, have people calling up trying to sell us everything. The worst one was the one called up and said, "Do you buy stuff there?" My answer was, "Stuff's a very big field." And it turned out she had, like Garbage Pail Kids.
Like original ones?
I didn't get that far because it's not a game and I wasn't ready to buy it.
Right.
And there's another subheading for you. Thank you for reminding me. There was a whole series, even back in the early 90s, there's a whole series of what we'll call non-sports cards.
Right, and Garbage Pail Kids was under that category.
Every movie, TV series, book series had them bring out a series of collectible cards. There was another dealer when I was doing games, a couple named Pat and Eddie, nice folk. They were doing the non-sports cards, and and they would have, 2 or 3 6-foot tables set up with the trays of the various cards, and then the chase cards or the autographs in binders below. And everything you've ever heard of, and a lot of stuff you hadn't, has a non-sports card set out there. And again, I just stayed away.
Yeah, is it really a moneymaker from that standpoint when you look at the grand scheme of like actual card games, sports cards and non-sports cards?
Pat and Eddie seem to do okay. The value in the non-sports cards is not in the individual sets, but it's in the chase cards or the autographs.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. Like the limited collector pieces.
That come, 1 or 2 per box.
Right.
Which means that the sets are of value to the paper recycler. Although I will confess, I did get a box of the Serenity TV series non-sports cards, and managed to pull a Summer Glau and Ron Glass autograph card out of it. And since Mr. Glass is regrettably no longer with us, I figure that's now valuable if I ever want to sell it. But yeah, I'm a nerd. I'm a Serenity fan. Okay, I'll give you. But yeah, that was a huge field, and it may still be for all I know. But the journey has been learning what to cut out.
Sure, that seems like a very challenging thing. I've always wondered as a game store owner how you know when to do that. Like how long do you hold something for before you're like, okay, let's cut our losses?
I'm very bad at that. The store is packed to the gills. And if you saw the table, this is just what would fit in the van. My problem is, well, there's 2 paths to it. Mm-hmm. First, I am if I'm not the collector that Bill Jaffe is, I am a collector. And so it's very hard for me to just let go of something knowing that in 5 years it'll be $300 on eBay. The second problem is that I don't buy anything except that I believe somebody will like it.
Sure.
Somebody will want this. This looks like a cool game. And so, admitting it's not right, I was wrong on that, is always tough. I was wrong here, okay. That said, gentleman Omar Jones works with me at the stores. Mm-hmm. And every year I promise him I will take 6 full Alliance boxes, the 3x4x6.
Right.
Take that to the Gen Con auction and not bring them back. So I just take it to the Gen Con auction, dump it in the auction at $1, and let it go. I try not to pay attention. But Omar selects stuff that he just doesn't want to see or pack anymore.
Right.
It's tough, and I'm not good at it.
Yeah, I would imagine it would have to be tricky because you're essentially having to predict what's going to work. And I'm sure there are, though, the opposite sides of the coin where you guessed right on something.
Oh, yeah. Oh, surely. But there are some games which I look at and go, why on God's name would anyone want to buy that? And not for the camera, because I will tell you about, Horse Girl. But it is not a subject fit for public consumption. It's one of those gruesome, dark games I've seen. So much so I thought it was perhaps a joke. Except I saw it in situations where this couldn't be a joke.
Right.
But yeah, I've guessed right on some things, but I don't go heavy in anything. In terms of board games, I'll get a couple. In terms of new card games, if I get it at all, I'll get a box of starters and a box or two of boosters. I'm not going to, put all my chips on the line for the Crow game. Right. Even though, I never saw The Crow, but Deb liked it and thought it was the greatest movie ever. Fine. I'm not gonna mortgage everything for anything anymore. It's, call me old, call me, crotchety in my old age, and I'll probably agree. But I don't know that there's anything that I'm willing to bet the farm on anymore.
That's completely understandable. I mean, are you, though, running the store all by yourself, or are there other employees?
There are no employees.
So it's all you?
Well, yeah, except Omar comes in and sits the store for a while and gives me days off and runs some Yu-Gi-Oh tournaments for me. And Peggy comes in and helps when Omar and I can't be there, and is a huge help. That's good. She's also more mechanically inclined than either of us, so fixing the door or replacing the ballast on the lights, she takes care of that, and thank you.
And you have the events you run at the store too?
The big events we run there, there's the Lorcana, which in terms of not betting the store on something, is as close as I've come to betting the store and having it pay off.
For Lorcana?
Lorcana is the new Disney card game. We didn't go whole hog. Mm-hmm. We bought 10 cases of it. Okay. And then the prices went absolutely ape manure. And when the distributors start telling you you're allocated, you know that you're hitting it, that you've done well. Do I owe you the Fallen Empire story from Magic?
I would like to hear that, yeah.
All right. Comes back, Magic is the greatest thing out there. You're missing the boat if you don't buy Magic. Now, the distributors had been allocating stores for Magic product, from Legends, from Ice Age. You'd order 10, you'd get 1. Now, I have to confess, I had a very good deal with my distributor. I would order exactly what I wanted. I wouldn't store any. I said, I need 6. He'd give me 6. I wouldn't ask for 60. I'd take my 6. And that was knowing that I wasn't pushing things, knowing that I wasn't trying to spec on any of the stuff. They would just let me get my 6. Yeah. But Fallen Empires was coming out, and everybody and his brother knew that you were going to get allocated 1 for every 10.
Right.
So the sports card guys were getting into it, and so they ordered piles, and the stores ordered piles, because if you want 10, you have to order 100, because you're going to get allocated 1 to 10. I ordered my 6. Got my 6. I was happy. But they started seeing all these pre-order numbers, with 2 extra zeros on them. And so they started to print to fit the pre-orders. I'll get you give me my 6, you got your 6, and that's all I knew. But Wizards was seeing all these pre-order numbers and started printing to it. And so it started coming out, and the guys who ordered 100 boxes had UPS show up with 100 boxes on a COD for $6,500. Now, I don't know about you, but we do not keep enough cash in the store or cash in the checking account to write a good check for $6,500. But it was happening across the board. People were turning it down, refusing the CODs. So a lot of game stores folded. A lot of sports cards, because this was hitting into the steroid age, and the sports card values were crashing and burning. Everybody was using steroids. Not everybody was using steroids, but everybody's stats were suspicious.
Of course, yeah, I remember that.
Because of the PEDs. And so the sports card guys were having this magic, and the trick with sports cards is that sports cards have a shelf life of maybe 6 weeks. They have a very short shelf life because there's always a new set of something coming out.
Right, very different than compared to the gaming.
Oh, indeed.
Because the gaming gets more popular as it gets older, so to hear the stark difference here, that's incredible.
If you wanted to look up and see what a pack of Legends is bringing these days, we could talk real figures. But the odds of packs of 1994 baseball cards, unless they had some super rookie in them, and I don't remember, them bringing four digits, not happening.
Right.
But the sports card guys are used to keep it a month, dump it and run, and so the sports card guys started dumping their stuff, and boxes were available at $15-20.
And that's like unheard of in the gaming.
Well, I think they cost you like $65, and they retailed for like $120. I'd have to check. It's been too many years to remember the exact numbers. But the sports card guys just dropped it to get anything out of it, and they could. So all of a sudden, the prices crashed all the way around. And it took years, decades, for fallen empires to recover. And the dominoes started falling. Stores wouldn't take their stuff. Distributors suddenly couldn't pay their bills because they owed Wizards of the Coast for not boxes, not even cases, but pallets of the stuff that wasn't being taken. And so several of the distributors failed. A few other distributors merged together and combined rather than try to operate separately. And now I wasn't privy to any of this. I'm sorry, this is the worm's eye view of the world. But if Wizards hadn't stepped in, gaming in general would have been gone. This is the same time that TSR is having its financial problems and having all their stuff returned from, was it Barnes & Noble? Anyhow, all the mass market booksellers had return policies on all their D&D stuff, and they returned it. And Wizards of the Coast hadn't adequately accounted for that.
Oh, so the distributors would take the stuff back on Wizards' behalf?
The mass market bookseller would return things to Wizards or to TSR, and TSR had to pay them back and had problems there. The distributors owed the money to Wizards, and either the stuff wasn't being accepted in this when they sent out the CODs, or people were canceling their pre-orders, taking the 10 when they were offered the 100. But Wizards was the one, at the end of it, who could have pulled the plug on bunches of people and didn't. They, as I understand the story, and this is all second or third hand, they did not push the finances. They did not force people to pay their bills on time. They operated on terms and thus kept gaming around.
Right.
Both role-playing and cards.
Yeah, and it's very interesting to hear, especially when you were talking about Lorcana and the success that it's been for your store, because I've talked to some other owners that the Lorcana, they had that hype period where it was really good, and now they've since seen a decline. But is it like that from your side as well, or is it still doing well?
Is it hype through the roof? No. Is it solid? Yes. But the hype can't last. The hype can never last. And if you have a good game with people playing at the store and having fun, That's the goal.
Of course.
Let me say that if you want to get rich, do not work at or own a game store. Okay?
I've heard a lot of people say that. What is the biggest difficulty of running a game store? We're going to take a quick break from this podcast to talk about our sponsor, Cardboard Shuffle. Cardboard Shuffle was our 10th podcast interview here at the Match Slip with store owner Mark. Mark has expanded his brand and has produced his own card sleeves called Shuffle Shields. Shuffle Shields come in packs of 100 premium matte card sleeves for standard size trading cards. They contain no PVC and are acid free. I have 17 packs of Shuffle Shields card sleeves to give away to listeners of the podcast and followers of the Match Slip on social media. Requests for a free pack of card sleeves shipped for free to you will be processed on a first-come, first-served basis. To receive your free pack of Shuffle Shields, you'll need to send a screenshot that you're following Cardboard Shuffle on Facebook to frank@thematchslip.com. Good luck, and back to the episode. What is the biggest difficulty of running a game store?
When the customers, when the players aren't cooperating, that's when you wind up with problems. When somebody says, for Magic, I only want to play Commander, and everybody should play Commander. And what am I supposed to do about that now? And somebody else says, well, I only want to play Standard. Everybody should play Standard. And when they can't cooperate among themselves and expect me to sort out,
To be the mediator.
but I've got no way to be mediator. Frank, whatever you want to play is fine by me until you get to the point of drawing human blood.
Yeah.
Okay?
So they're starting to get combative.
They're getting combative because they want what they want. And I can't make them do anything. I can only say, all right, Commander Mondays, Standard Tuesdays. And then instead of one group, you've got two half-size groups, each complaining that the other group isn't playing their stuff. Mm-hmm. And don't toss, we'll toss the modern people in on that too.
Right.
And so when the players aren't cooperating, that's my greatest grief.
And so what, from the flip side of that, what's the greatest happiness that running the game store brings you?
Give me three.
Okay.
First, I will show you over at the table, we have a shelf of kids' games. And I'm talking 2 years old and up. Mm-hmm. There's a German company, Hobbit, that does games for 2-year-olds. Seeing a little kid,
Yeah.
2, 3, 4, find a game, clutch it to her chest, and want to play is one of the best feelings you'll have. Because that little girl was born in the year 2020, and she, with an average life expectancy, will turn 80 and still be gaming in the year 2100. And if she thinks kindly of that old guy who got her that game back, just after the pandemic, and remembers me in the year 2100, I've achieved immortality. Seeing the little kids be happy. Seeing kids learning, particularly at the Yu-Gi-Oh tournaments. Mm-hmm. We have Yu-Gi-Oh tournaments Saturdays and Sundays, and there's a younger kid, probably now at about 12 or 13, mm-hmm. and he doesn't win much yet. But each time when he's leaving, somebody says, "Do you ask?" I don't ask him, "Did you have fun?" I said, "Did you learn something?"
Yeah. And
so now he's walking out and he goes, "I learned something and I had fun." He's learning. He's still doing his fair share of losing. And the third big one is, I want to split that in half, but there are several challenged players mm-hmm. who play Yu-Gi-Oh at the store. And they have fun. Even though their reading and math skills are probably not really up to what would be needed, we can take care of them and make it work. And one of the challenged kids and his father come to play. And they both have so much fun that I just sit back and love it. I don't know if you saw the movie Bucket List. Morgan,
I have, yes.
You have. Okay, there's a line in there. I think it's Morgan Freeman's, but the Egyptians had a line. When you come to the judgment throne, they do not ask your accomplishments. They said, how much joy did you have in your life and how much joy did you bring to others? And I'm looking at that and going, I'm bringing joy to these people, or I'm helping them find joy.
And it brings joy. I could see it just when you're saying it
Yeah.
to me. It brings joy for you.
I'm enjoying it. I'm spending my life, I've spent my life trying to bring joy to people.
Because why do it for any other reason?
This is not the money. One story for you. I'm pretty sure it was a scam, but a guy called up and said he had $500,000 of certified magic cards for sale, and he only needed 50 grand in cash. No, I don't have 50 grand in cash. Could I raise 50 grand in cash? Yes, but it would take a while. Not in the next week.
Yeah.
I'd need a couple of weeks or so. But he was urgent to sell it now, which made me think scam.
Of course, yeah.
But the other half of it, thinking that I had $50,000 kicking around. The kid who comes in and goes, wow, I guess you make a lot of money here. To which my answer was, well, there are lots of bills. Yeah, because if you were older, I was thinking the next stop is, this was my gun, give it to me. But he was too young to pull that one. He was just being impertinent. But yeah, people think there's a whole lot more money there than there is.
Why do you think that misconception is there? Because you think it's just an oversight of all the overhead and expenses that are involved, not just running the store, but even doing stuff like this, like coming to a convention, do you think it's just not realizing that side of it? And it looks like from the front, it's more the glamorous side of like, oh, I have a game store.
I have Magic Dual Lands, that we're selling for, upper three figures. We have those, but we have them. We don't have the cash.
Because it's sitting in the cards.
Because it's in the cards. It's in the games.
Right.
$200,000 in inventory, and we didn't even quite get to counting the boxes of Magic singles, because we looked at each other and went, we could do this, or we could just take a good guesstimate. You have 5,000 count boxes full of Magic singles, probably 40 or 50 of them. Not all full, mind you. But there's one other story for you, though. Scry story. Mm-hmm. Many years ago, Scry magazine had ads, and this one guy advertised he had 4 million Magic cards for sale. This is 94, 95.
Okay.
So, I am going to pull out my calculator just because I need to show how this works. We've got 4 million Magic cards, right?
Okay.
4 million Magic cards.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the standard card box fits 5,000 baseball cards, call that 7,500 Magic cards. So we'll divide that by 7,500, and that gets you
533.33 repeated.
Yeah, so that gives you 534 of those 5,000 count boxes. Mm-hmm. Okay, now that 5,000 count box is about yay, which is what? Call it 18 inches?
Okay.
Divided by, what is he? 18 inches, or multiplied, 534 times 18 inches divided by 12 gives you a row, was it, I screwed up the math, but 18 inches long, you have 500 of them, divided by 12 for the feet,
right,
is what, 700 feet long? So you need 600 shelf feet?
It's a lot.
But wait, we have to start about sorting cards. If you assume there were only, call it 40,000 Magic cards at the time, and you've got 4 million of them, even assuming that you've got them in the, 11 rares, 3 uncommons, 11 commons, 3 uncommons, 1 rare configuration of the pack, which is by no means a given, mind you. But, it's still, you've got thousands of each card, assuming an even distribution. And I started doing this because when you leave me alone in large numbers, I get weird. I called Margaret White from Scry, saying, I don't mean to call your advertisement false, but are you really telling me that he has 3,800 revised circles of protection white? Because it worked out to like 3,800 cards. She goes, oh. And Scry, being the reputable magazine that it is, cut the advertisement. And that guy wasn't able to advertise with Scry anymore because I convinced them that 4 million Magic cards couldn't work.
Oh, wow, that's fascinating.
I thought so. Bore you with one other. I was working with Scry. Scry was doing an article on counterfeit cards, Pokemon mostly. And so I'd contributed a couple of paragraphs to the article, and we talked about what we'd seen.
Mm-hmm.
But there was a type of counterfeit card that we hadn't seen. And so Scry was not going to go with that paragraph because they hadn't seen it. There was a gentleman, a granddad, who would bring his kid in for Pokemon cards. And the kid came in, Scry magazine in Milwaukee, they had to know by 1 o'clock. It's like 1:15 in Baltimore, my time. Noon theirs. This kid comes in with his granddad, who they come in a fair bit. He goes, look at these cards I got in Ocean City. And sure enough, they were the counterfeits that we hadn't seen.
Mm-hmm.
So I said, excuse me. So I called Margaret and said, go ahead, include that article. I've got them. I'll get one in the mail to you. And I had the clout to, they believed me. So they ran with that, went back and realized I hadn't told the kid that his cards were counterfeit. And so I explained, very apologetically that, these were counterfeit and you could sell them here. And, oh yes, I do need to trade you two common real Pokemon cards for your counterfeits, not because I'm buying counterfeit cards, but because I wanted a sample and I needed a sample to send to Margaret. The granddad fortunately told me that because of the price he paid, he was pretty certain they weren't good, so I wasn't shocking him. The punchline to this, about 6 weeks ago, a guy comes into the store to buy some Pokemon cards for his kid. He goes, yeah, I remember you when you were over in the old place. My granddad used to bring me in there.
Oh, wow.
I said, and you were the one who had those counterfeit cards that I got. He goes, wow, I hadn't thought of that.
Wow,
for
so
you.
he's all grown up now.
He's grown up. He has kids buying Pokemon cards for his own kids.
Oh, that's crazy. What an awesome story.
But
you never know, right?
But we're a smaller field than you know. Gaming.
You all know each other. I've noticed that.
You'll recognize people, or people who you haven't seen in a while will still show up.
Yeah.
We're still out there. We're still circling.
It's just an incredible thing. I mean, do you see, though, that in the store a lot these days in terms of like coming across counterfeit cards, not just say Pokemon, but other games? Is that something like you're able to spot? I know there are little tools and stuff that you could use to check.
I am getting old, or I am old. So I am not as confident in my eyesight as I was 20 years ago.
Okay.
So I do now have some people who back me up.
That's good.
But are counterfeit cards out there? Yes. Are there tons of them out there? Yes. Are there bunches of people willing or perhaps even eager to rip people off by selling them counterfeit cards? Yes. In point of fact, last year at Crash CityCon here, I did my hour on how to detect counterfeit cards.
Oh, really? Oh, cool.
Yes. I've done that at several shows. With samples, so you can see,
right.
because I have educational samples for when I do the class. I don't have counterfeit cards that I sell, and the manufacturers get very, very particular about that.
Right. And you've acquired, and this is just from acquired knowledge over the years, because I'm guessing you've run into scenarios where you would buy something and to find out later that somebody counterfeited the card, or was it different how you acquired that knowledge?
I almost always find, when I buy a binder of stuff, I almost always, now, I sometimes find counterfeits in there.
Okay.
I sometimes find binders entirely of counterfeits, predominantly of counterfeits. I may get into trouble for this one, but when I see a counterfeit I haven't seen before, I'll trade a good card or pay a quarter for it, just because. And we can do this after the show if you want. I can show you how this card is counterfeit, and you can see how it's counterfeit much better than I could ever tell you how it's counterfeit.
Interesting.
This card is bad. It doesn't feel right. You're going to go, Dad, how does it not feel right? And I'm going to go, well, it doesn't feel right. Instead, I say, here, feel this card. It is good. You go, okay, feel this card. You're going to go, this card doesn't feel right. You can feel it. You can see it. But trying to explain that it doesn't flex well enough,
Right.
I can't do that. I'm not that good. So I need to have some counterfeit cards to put in your hand to show you what.
To show the difference. It's best to get a hands-on approach to it.
I do not know how to teach people about counterfeit cards without being hands-on, which means I have to have counterfeits, which means I don't have to have counterfeit cards, but as my Wizards of the Coast is very particular about their stores not having counterfeits, and rightly so, okay? But my first sales rep told me that I don't have counterfeit cards, I have educational samples. And I need educational samples because
you don't want somebody getting ripped off.
I can't teach you how to detect counterfeit cards yourself. And I'll be happy to teach you how to do it. I'll be happy to have you go out and teach some of the little kids you know how to do it, because I can't do it. And I almost certainly won't be around in 25 years. I probably won't be around in 20, and I may not be around in 15. The numbers are inescapable. So I want you and all of you out there also learning about counterfeit cards, teach people, show the kids, learn, put the counterfeit people out of business. Sorry.
That's okay. No, I know you're passionate about it, but I think it's good that you're doing that, because even for somebody like myself, maybe a while back, I saw an example of somebody showing how you could take the little magnifying glass and you could see. That was just one example of checking. And I had never known prior. I knew there were counterfeits out there, but it's good to see people like yourself, watching out for somebody who might not be thinking about it, that gets, screwed over.
My terror is that the printing presses in China are as good as what we have in the US. And so it's entirely possible to print unlicensed cards, which are as good as the real ones.
The real thing, yeah.
Because you've got the paper, you've got the print. The major cards are are often counterfeited. But the major cards are also where you're going to spend your time.
Right.
If I'm selling you a $900 card, you're going to spend time looking at it.
Right, because it's a lot of money putting into one single thing.
Exactly. But when I'm buying a binder yay thick of Pokemon cards, am I going to notice that there were counterfeits on pages 25 through 32?
Right.
If I look through it and if I spend enough time, no, you'll find counterfeits, commons, uncommons, rares, expensive stuff. Whether Pokemon or Yu-Gi-Oh or Magic, and I haven't looked closely at the others. But yeah. And then there are the Chinese non-licensed knockoffs, and we can debate whether are those counterfeit, because to my mind a counterfeit card has to try to pass as a real one. But when they just make Yu-Gi-Oh cards that aren't licensed by Konami, are they counterfeits or are they just not licensed rip-offs?
Right.
And we can have that debate sometime. I'm not sure there's a real difference there.
So one of the things I wanted to ask you about was coming to conventions like this. Like, for example, we'll start off, what makes you want to come to Crash City Con? What is it that you like about this event?
One, I love Roanoke. Two, it is put on by a bunch of friends of mine. At the risk of including, but certainly not limited to, I would drive to come visit Ron Belcher just for the fun of it. If I can make some money on the deal, all the better. Don, Hamer, George Minter, the clothing people. There are bunches of friends here. I like the drive. I love the scenery around Roanoke, and I would be here regardless. Okay, tell me to show up, and I'm happy. There are a number of shows, from New Jersey through Carolina, where I have a number of friends, and having done it, over pushing 30 years now, I have a number of friends. Children who are now well into their teens. I see friends. I get to see more customers, and it's hard work, but I have help. Because to my mind, game stores will fail because they have a limited range. There's only so far somebody will drive to get to your game store.
Right. This is almost like a marketing aspect to it as well, like to let people know about your store if you're not like already in the state where the convention is held.
If you ever visit, Baltimore, I'd hope you stop by and say hi.
Oh, absolutely.
If you buy something, all the better. If not, you just said hi, and that's fine. I'm not trying to drag people to the store because, from Baltimore, from here, not happening. But I can show them the stuff one van full of stuff that we have at the store. And, we can have access to that many more 100 customers, stuff that they don't see elsewhere. Mm-hmm. And that expands our ability to sell stuff.
This episode of The Match Slip is sponsored by Crash CityCon, Roanoke, Virginia's premier gaming and fan convention. It's tabletop gaming at its best. In addition to role-playing games, board games, there are vendors and so much more. Play with some of the top game masters in the area, enjoy a casual game in their open gaming area, or learn to play games you always wanted to play. You could check out more information at crashcitycon.com.
Crash City in particular,
Yeah, you have an affinity for it.
I love Roanoke. I can be talked into visiting here any weekend I'm not otherwise occupied. Show up. Okay, fine.
I like your answer a lot because most of the time I know stores will go to conventions, not necessarily for selling product, but like for buying stuff to bring back to their store. And yours is more along the lines of friendship and granted, stores have to make money to stay in business.
Oh, yeah.
We know it's not a multi-million-dollar business because it is low margins, unfortunately. But I like your viewpoint of it, that it's a lot of the friendship aspect for you that draws you to them.
Oh yeah. I don't know if there are shows where I look at new product. Do I want to, carry this? But I generally don't do those shows as a dealer because if the manufacturers are selling their own stuff, what do I have to offer? Mm-hmm. And so I do, and I spend a lot of time with the retailer magazines, what's upcoming, to see what I want to. But that leads us back to where we started. I have to say no. I don't say no enough. I admit it. You'll talk. You come back to the table. You'll talk to Bean. He says, I still carry too much stuff. Come to the store. Talk to Omar. Have him say no. We need to take his credit card away from him. We can't let him buy more stuff. Because I fail. I buy too much stuff. I think too much stuff is interesting. And so that's my failure of it.
So if you were to describe, Dan, like if I'm walking into your store, can you describe a little bit of what the layout of it looks like how you have the store structured?
Okay, you walk in. To your immediate right are some of the plastic cases of the little mini expansions. There's some of the newer dice, and then you get to the Yu-Gi-Oh counter with dozens of different Yu-Gi-Oh products. Mm-hmm. With some of the newer stuff. We have the Pokemon case with the Pokemon products. I've been trying to cut down on that. The right wall is full of Magic packs and binders of Magic singles and some other binders and some stuff that I still need to put away. And then some other boxes of Pokemon cards that I still need to put away. And then there's walls of board games, regrettably now also piled on the floor. It's hopelessly unprofessional, but I'm out of space. We have one, half wall devoted to historical war games, just because, that's where I got my gaming start, and the historicals are still appealing. The number of, the whole back wall, two halves of a wall full of board games, families. One two shelves about, the 3 foot long, full of kids games. That is, up to 7 and up for kids, as we talk. And then boxes and a case piled to the brim, and then some of the little small games. So yeah, I always need to clean up, but I vacuum. I try to vacuum every day. I wipe down the counters, but there's always more to sort.
I know you said like you feel there's not enough space. Would getting a bigger store ever be in the cards, or would that be too much involved?
Not at my age.
Right.
I'm no longer energetic enough to do that. But when the next owner comes along, it's a question of size versus sales.
Okay.
Your rent. How much rent are you going to pay? And give me a number. Pick a number, any number. How much monthly rent?
$1,600.
Okay, $1,600. Then you got your light, and maybe your heat, and your phone on top of that, and maybe wireless. We don't have the wireless, but okay, $1,600. Figure your magic packs are, figure your magic or Yu-Gi-Oh packs or Pokemon packs are $5 per. How many packs do you have to sell a month just to meet your rent?
Just to hit the 1,600.
Right, divided by 5.
Off the top of my head, I'm not 100%.
That's why
sure
we
off
pull
top
out
of
the
my head.
calculator. So 1,600 divided by 5. Yes, so 320 magic packs.
Just to break even on the rent side.
And you haven't replaced those magic packs.
And which is now another purchase.
Which you could have taken that $1,600 worth of magic packs, dumped them down the toilet, and been in the exact same, stayed at home and been in the exact same position.
Yeah.
So you've got to sell, twice 32. So you've got to sell 640 magic packs to pay your rent. And you haven't gotten paid yet.
Yeah.
You spent your 48 hours a week, and the guy who comes in on Saturdays because you do need some time off. He'll want to get paid, and he'll take 3 magic packs an hour. Well, great, and that's good. Except that's another.
Yeah.
That you have to replace.
It's quite daunting when you think about it.
It is, but it leads back to where we are. Nobody's getting richer.
Right, and you love it, and that's the driving factor for you, from what I'm understanding.
And now I'm hopelessly unemployable elsewhere. But yeah.
So my last question, Dan, is what is one thing you would like to see for the future of the store?
That's a toughie. I know I have to sell out eventually, unless they carry me out feet first, which is scary, but there are a couple of people. Damian Dorsey, thank you. Mr. Dorsey stops by 2 or 3 times a week just to check in on me. So if I have fallen and blown out my hip, or have had a heart attack and died at the cash register, he stops in to make sure that no disaster has struck. I would like to see somebody take the store and still spread the joy with it. I want it to be a place of joy. And you're going to say, but you turn all those people down with the stuff they're trying to sell you. And the answer is, yeah, I do. And maybe I don't do it with the gentleness that I ought to. But guys want too much money for their stuff. And no thank you. It wouldn't be for us. I don't want to explain more than that. I don't want to explain your stuff's junk. I don't want to have to go into your stuff's counterfeit, and I don't want to deal with it. Because they're going to insist it isn't. And what good comes of that? But yeah, to answer your question, I've blathered on too far. I'm sorry. Continue to spread the joy.
That's great. So Dan, the last thing, if you want to tell everyone where they could find the store, whether it be online or if they're in the area.
I'm sorry, I am not the online part of it. We are near the intersection of German Hill Road and Merritt Boulevard in Baltimore. German Hill Road is Well, Merritt Boulevard has a beltway exit 39. German Hill Road is the first exit through the tunnels, through the 895 tunnel. But yes, visit us. Stop by. If you see my car outside, pound on the door. Stop by and visit. And thank you for the advertising blurb.
Appreciate you coming on, Dan. Thanks
Frank,
so much. It was a
thank you.
pleasure.